But now that he didn't have any other records to worry about, Matthias could focus all his efforts there. The A1A was on its last legs. They had put up a good fight for the past several months, but eventually Matthias alone had been able to outmatch all of them. Matthias is a really nice guy, and nobody in the Alliance had anything personal against him, but hardly anyone wanted to see someone hold all 32 records at once. It would be an embarrassment to all the other record contenders. Matthias said in a forum post that he was going to be unable to play until November 23rd, so the Alliance at least had until then to try to take a record from him. So, over the weekend, the Alliance got to work. Dan, Zoran, VAJ, and others were trying to take at least one of Matthias's records. But as the days passed, nobody was beating any. Even with the Alliance members spending hours each day grinding courses, nobody could take any of Matthias's 31 records. That's how good he was. That's how far ahead his records were. And sure enough, on the morning of November 23rd, 2015, the day Matthias came back to try to match TJL's Mumu Farm last time, a new record was posted. This is Abney317. He's one of the best in the world at Mario Kart 64, but his area of focus isn't with non-shortcut records. Instead, he's held dozens of shortcut records and the coveted 150cc large skip speed run record for years, but he's had the skill to take some non-shortcut records too. And on November 22nd, 2015, he came to the community's rescue. A 212.61 on Bowser's Castle, a new record by 7/100ths of a second. Abney went after this record in particular because it was one of Matthias's oldest records. The quality of play had gotten slightly better since then, so Abney perceived it as weaker than most of Matthias's other records. And apparently he was right. He was able to use different paths around the thwomps to go faster. But unfortunately for him, that also meant that the very next day, Matthias was able to beat Abney's record to get back to 31 out of 32. All he needed was to shave 9/100ths of a second off his Mumu Farm lap to get to 32 out of 32. He was so close, and he kept pushing. But then, it was Abney to the rescue again, this time on Calamari Desert 3-lap. This record wasn't nearly as old as Bowser's Castle. It was set only a week prior, but it was unoptimized. Just a month ago, a new strategy called hill hopping was first used by a player known as Dotman. By hopping off the hills on the sand at specific points, you get more airtime and don't slow down nearly as much as normal. Abney used this to his advantage, and for the second time in just 2 days, he was able to stop Matthias dead in his tracks at 31 out of 32. But that wasn't enough to feel safe. Matthias could casually pick up new records seemingly whenever he wanted, and Abney didn't have as much experience with non-shortcut records. So, just to be safe, Abney figured he should probably go on the attack. Abney was actually standing up to Matthias. He wasn't just looking to defend his own records, he was actively looking to take records he didn't have. And it was working. During one crazy stretch in January 2016, he set 4 new records in 5 days. It put Matthias down to 27 out of 32, his lowest total in months. Abney had once again proven that Matthias was beatable. But as always, Matthias came back to racing later that month, 4 records down from where he was just weeks prior. But rather than be intimidated by what Abney had done, he saw 4 records that were well within his abilities. 2 of them were on long courses with room for optimization, Wario Stadium and Rainbow Road. Because of Matthias' ability to take just slightly better lines and optimize his driving, he knew that there was room for improvement over Abney's record. And he was right. picking them both up in a matter of weeks. The other two, Calamari Desert and Bowser's Castle, each had new strategies that Matias hadn't implemented yet. The hill hopping on Calamari Desert, and different thwomp paths on Bowser's Castle. Once he did, 2 more quick world records, putting his record total right back to 31 out of 32, his 3rd time achieving that total. It was miraculous how he could do this. If someone took Matias's records, he would just immediately grind to beat them back. People could temporarily beat him, but he would always prevail in the end. The one exception, of course, was Moo Moo Farm. For the 3rd time, he just needed that one record to get 32 out of 32. And for the 3rd time, Abney took the chance away from him.
Frogget, Super Frogget, he's gonna save the day, 'cause he is a frog combined with a git. He's a Frogget, a frog with a git. He's Super Frogget, Frogget, Super Frogget, he's gonna save the day, 'cause he is a frog combined with a git. He's a Frogget, a frog with a git. He's Super Frogget, Frogget, Super Frogget, he's gonna save the day, 'cause he is a frog combined with a git. He's a Frogget, a frog with a git. He's Super Frogget, Frogget, Super Frogget, he's gonna save the day, 'cause he is a frog combined with a git. He's a Frogget, a frog with a git. He's Super Frogget, Frogget, Super Frogget, he's gonna save the day, 'cause he is a frog combined with a git. He's a Frogget, a frog with a git. He's Super Frogget, Frogget, Super Frogget, he's gonna save the day, 'cause he is a frog combined with a git. He's a Frogget.
A lot better at other courses too, and picked up records on courses like Wario Stadium and Yoshi Valley. Again, it was nothing revolutionary, just learning the right lines to take, how to take each turn, and other small driving mechanics. But regardless, the end result was there. Matias was far away from perfection, and it seemed like maybe, just maybe, the community could take it easy and not have to worry about 32 out of 32. But then, in October, Matias did this.
Yes! 212.67. Clutched it with a cave. What a cave pop. Yes! 23. Can you believe it?
Over the course of 4 weeks in October 2016, Matias set 7 new world records. All of the months of work throughout 2016 done by Dan, Abney, and others were undone in a matter of weeks. World records on Wario Stadium, Mario Raceway, DK Jungle Parkway, Calamari Desert, Yoshi Valley, all by simply outdriving the other record holders. And that meant that for the 4th time, Matias was at 31 out of 32 records. Once again, the one that was missing was Moo Moo Farm Lap. Let's take a closer look at that record. It was 27.82 by TJL, whereas Matias's best time was 27.91. TJL's record was one of the oldest records still standing at this point, being set all the way back in March 2013, shortly after Matias first became the non-shortcut champion. Moo Moo Farm is a very unique course. With slopes you have to go up and a fence you have to drive as closely to as possible. There's 3 very particular spots you have to use your mushrooms, hugging the inside fence and driving over the moles while you do. TJL had been able to completely master it back in 2013. But since Matthias had 31 other records to worry about, he just couldn't quite figure out how to do this course optimally. Well, until now.
87. I felt the PR, I felt it.
It was a personal best by 400ths of a second, meaning Matthias was now a 20th of a second away from 32 out of 32. His other 31 out of 32s only lasted for a day or 2 at most. But this one was different. 5 days later, by Halloween night, he was still alive at 31 out of 32. Abney wasn't there. Dan wasn't there. The Alliance had gone radio silent. The only thing there was Matthias grinding Moo Moo Farm, closer to the record than ever. And then, Lacey came to the rescue. On October 31st, 2016, Lacey got a 2:12.50 on DK Jungle Parkway 3-lap. This course, especially on the 3-lap side, really was Lacey's specialty. It was his 23rd world record there, and this one couldn't have come at a bigger time. The thing is, Matthias definitely was the better driver of the two of them. Lacey just knew this course inside and out, and he was still a really good driver. He knew exactly where to go on the ramp, exactly how to take the slopes through the jungle, exactly how to mash on the cave at the end. This one course took up a ton of his Mario Kart 64 playing time, whereas it was only a small fraction for Matthias. As expected, the community was elated. 4 times now, Matthias had been at 31 out of 32, and 4 times he had been stopped at the last minute. And you might be noticing a pattern at this point. Matthias would get really close to 32 out of 32, then someone would stop him at the nick of time, Matthias would stop playing for a while, and then the community would grind together and take his total down lower. Well, that would happen again now in 2017, but this time, the community took it a step further. By November 2017, Matthias was at 21 out of 32 records, his lowest total in 4 years. There were 2 reasons his total got this low. The first was the usual period of inactivity from Matthias. He didn't completely stop playing, but he wasn't aggressively defending his non-shortcut records. And second, Dan took his gameplay to the next level. At one point in July 2017, he had 11 world records, the first time someone other than Matthias had had that many records in years. This was Matthias' lowest point since his quest for 32 out of 32 started. He knew he could get most of those records back, but what would it matter? We've seen it time and time again. Matthias would get his total up to 31 out of 32 with some effort, only to be stopped by one course in particular. Moo Moo Farm Lap was always in his way. The 27.82 by TJL was his nemesis, and it was just too good for him to beat. But then, he did it. On November 27th, 2017, Matthias tied TJL's legendary 27.82. The key to getting it was playing the course a ton. It came at the end of a several week-long grind, where he had dozens of laps in the 2780s. During that time, he mastered everything there was to know about Moo Moo Farm, and ultimately it all came together on one magical run. His shrooms were clean, his mini-turbos were perfectly timed on the slopes, his driving was tight. In March 2013, TJL set a magical run with his 27.82. It took Matthias 4.5 years, but finally he had replicated it. And it changed everything. This was the one world record Matthias had been unable to hold. The one record preventing him from getting 32 out of 32 for the past 2 years. Now, he had it out of the way. He stood at 22 out of 32 records. He had gotten each of the remaining 10 records before, and he knew he could get them again. It was time, once and for all, to get 32 out of 32.
Oh yes, that should be enough. Yes! 4:25.
Sure enough, 3 months later, despite some resistance from Dan, Matthias was back at 31 out of 32. The last record he needed was DK Jungle Parkway 3-lap. Of course, he had struggled with the times, but still a record he had held on 4 separate occasions in the past. His best time was 2:12.58. The record was 2:12.35 by Lacey. He was behind, but this record was certainly within reach. Time to finish the job. And then, on March 13th, 2018, Matthias made history. He was beaten by Abdi in Calamari Desert at the last minute, for the 3rd time. This was starting to get absurd. It was the 4th time Abdi had prevented 32 out of 32, the 3rd time on Calamari Desert. And of course, Matthias congratulated Abdi on the Mario Kart 64 forums, only to beat him the very next day, right at 31 out of 32. Without a chance for the Alliance to gain any ground. So, Matthias went back to playing DK Jungle Parkway, 0.19 behind the record. And once again, he got results right away, getting a personal best that pushed him to just 0.15 behind Lacey's record. This strategy from the Alliance clearly wasn't working. Even if someone beat one of Matthias's 31 records, he could usually get it back within a day or so. That wasn't a good long-term solution. Dan recognized this problem, so he started doing a strategy that few others dared to. He grinded DK Jungle Parkway 3-lap alongside Matthias. This method certainly had its positives and negatives. On the upside, if he beat Matthias to the punch, it could make it harder to finish the job and get 32 out of 32. But Dan had only held this record once before, and Matthias certainly had the upper edge. If he failed to beat him, that would be a lot of time wasted he could have spent on any of the other courses. This certainly was a gamble, but it paid off, because on March 16th, 2018, Dan set one of the clutchest records in Mario Kart 64 history. This beat the record by almost 0.2 of a second. It put Matthias back to 0.34 behind the world record. But its true dividends would be paid the next day, when Matthias got this time. It missed being the world record by 24 hours. Had he gotten it the prior day, it would have been 32 out of 32. But thanks to Dan's brand new record, he was just barely behind, by a matter of 0.08. Still, they were clearly playing with fire. Matthias was less than 1/10 of a second from 32 out of 32, and had proven he was capable of taking time off his DK